Hello, and welcome to our discussion today about Salesforce Channels, a new type of Slack channel that brings customer data and team conversations together in both Salesforce and Slack. Before we dive into how Salesforce Channels actually works for users, let's first explore why this topic is so important. Within an organization, many functional teams exist: sales, service, marketing, product engineering, finance, legal. Each of these team members likely use one or more very specialized software applications. For example, most of us are familiar with Salesforce CRM, which is used by many sales, service, and marketing teams. Each member of these teams requires a Salesforce license and must also be trained to use the specialized software so as to be able to perform their functions within the normal flow of work. Different teams have a different flow of work and thus need different specialized applications. In addition to specialized applications for different teams, organizations use a variety of other common tools like Excel, Zoom, SharePoint, SurveyMonkey, and Jira, just to name a few. Salesforce did a survey in 2023 in which they learned that there are over 1,000 applications used by the average organization, and less than a third of those are integrated. That's a lot of data silos and a lot of applications that employees have to swivel between. Add to that, there are more customer expectations today than ever before. Customers expect more personalization. They demand that organizations communicate with them on a variety of different channels like text messaging, voice, email, and social media. They expect organizations to know and understand their unique needs. Customers just want results. They don't care which department is responsible, and they certainly don't care in which one of 1,000+ apps that the work gets done in. Organizations struggle. We all know that the way teams traditionally work together in support of the customer isn't working. Context is scattered, disconnected from the CRM. Teams only ever have half the picture. This impacts productivity, business profits, and ultimately customer experience. This broken way of working is unsustainable. Employees are maxed out, and companies at large just aren't meeting their customers' expectations. AI and agentic labor offers huge potential to help, but it needs full context to be effective, just like us humans. Simply adding AI won't fix broken collaboration. In fact, it might even make it worse. To solve this problem, we need a fundamental shift in how teams work, creating a solid foundation for both people and AI to succeed. We all understand the importance of having a 360 view of customers in Salesforce, but what if teams could get that full picture, not just the customer data, but also the insights shared in teams' everyday discussions, along with all of the apps, automation, and AI needed to move work forward? That's the vision of Salesforce Channels. Salesforce Channels isn't just about making things easier, it's about breaking down silos and giving every employee the power to act with the customer's full story in their hands right where they're already working. Say hello to Salesforce Channels, which is where there's a full view of the customer across data and dialogue in the flow of work. A channel powered by Slack is a dedicated place to work together, organized around a topic or project. Meanwhile, Salesforce organizes work around customer records. With Salesforce Channels, the two approaches are combined with a new model that transforms the way people and agents organize and act around their customers. Salesforce Channels creates that full single view of the customer so every teammate, human or agentic, can work together no matter where they work best, Slack and Salesforce. And by bridging structured and unstructured data, they are the backbone for Agentforce to reference that full context and produce more meaningful interactions. So how does Salesforce Channels work? Well, first, it's not just a product integration between Slack and Salesforce. We know that there are data silos when structured data around customers is in Salesforce and conversations about the same customer happens in Slack or other tools. Salesforce Channels fundamentally changes the flow of work by bridging structured and unstructured data and metadata to create the most comprehensive picture of the customer. Team collaboration is grounded in CRM data. Salesforce Channels can be created for any Salesforce object, including custom objects, and are one single place for teams to share knowledge and take action, whether it's in Slack or Salesforce. And with that automatically mapped metadata and permissions inherited from Salesforce, we can maintain data security while enabling collaboration and action. People can only see and edit the data that they're allowed to. Now that we have an overall understanding of Salesforce Channels, let's look at Salesforce Channels from the viewpoints of the humans who will be using this feature. Within the Salesforce platform, we have Salesforce end users and Salesforce admins. Within the Slack platform, we also have end users and admins. Let's continue our discussion of Salesforce Channels by looking at things through the viewpoint of users and admins. Let's start by looking at Salesforce Channels from the user persona perspective. We'll first look at Salesforce Channels from the viewpoint of a Salesforce user. On those slides, the background will be blue. When we switch to the Slack user viewpoint, we'll notice the background will change to orange. Within Salesforce, we can navigate to an individual Salesforce record where we can create a new Salesforce channel in Slack or connect to an existing Slack channel. Let's see what happens when a Salesforce user initiates the process to create a new channel. A Slack channel appears in the Salesforce record. After creating that new Salesforce channel in the Slack app, the Salesforce user can click on the people icon to manage Slack channel members. New people can be added to the Slack channel within Salesforce by the Salesforce user. People to be added aren't required to have a Salesforce license to be added in the Slack channel. The only requirement is that they have a Slack license. An important note is that if other Salesforce users in the org have access to this record, they would automatically be included in the channel unless they have a Slack license. Even though we're in the Salesforce record where the Slack channel appears, we still get the ability to use an emoji or two. We can also use threads. That's because this is simply a Slack channel surfaced within the Salesforce environment. As you can see here, the Slack component exists within the Salesforce record. If needed, the Salesforce user can quickly transition to the Slack app. From the Salesforce record, a user clicks on the Open in Slack button to be taken directly to Slack. Now that we're in Slack, we notice that a new channel has been created for the Salesforce account record. This new channel appears in the sidebar section on the left under Salesforce Channels. When we first enter the new Salesforce channel, the current tab is Messages. However, the Slack user can click on the Account Details tab or can add Canvas or click on Related List tabs. If we had chosen to create a new Slack channel for a different object, the details and related lists would be relevant for that particular Salesforce object. Within the Account Details tab, a user sees all the details and has access to the same fields that they have access to in Salesforce. They can make updates to those fields in Slack if they have the permissions in Salesforce. Here, you can see who is the account owner, and you can also see related lists. For example, you can use the related list to see the open cases for this account. Any changes to the record details made in Slack will be synced to Salesforce, where there's a bi-directional sync. The user can also quickly navigate back to Salesforce via a clickable link if they want to. We just saw what happened when we created a new channel from a Salesforce record. But instead of creating a new Salesforce channel, we could have linked the record to an existing Slack channel. However, if a user converts an existing Slack channel to a Salesforce channel, the channel name will change to the default Salesforce channel naming convention. A lot of users have requested that they be allowed to keep their channel naming convention rather than having it overwritten by the default naming convention. And I think this is something that may be on the roadmap. I'll provide a link if you want to see a short demo video. From an organization's perspective, Salesforce Channels now makes it possible for teammates to work together in real time to accelerate decisions in support of the customer. So we've seen Salesforce Channels from the perspective of the users. Now let's see what it takes for admins to bring this functionality to life. We'll now look at Salesforce Channels from the viewpoint of a Salesforce admin. On those slides, the background will be green. When we switch to the Slack admin viewpoint, we'll notice the background will change to red. For Salesforce Channel setup, there are 4 main steps that should be completed by Slack and Salesforce admins. Step 1 is to create the connection between Slack and Salesforce. As you would expect, there are required tasks that both admins will need to complete. Afterward, the Salesforce admin configures objects for Salesforce channels and grants access to Slack for Salesforce users. The last step is for the Slack admin to configure some additional settings. Let's begin with step 1, connect and map existing Salesforce and Slack accounts. If an organization is new to Salesforce and Slack, not all of these tasks need to be completed, but we're going to cover all these tasks because most organizations who want to use Salesforce channels probably already have Salesforce and Slack accounts. A Salesforce admin cannot start the process in Salesforce because the connection request must be initiated by the Slack administrator. However, the Salesforce admin will need to provide the Slack admin with the Salesforce URL, as that is something required when the Slack admin initiates the connection request. So the Slack administrator initiates the connection request by clicking on the workspace name, clicking on the Tools and Settings option, and then finally clicking on the Manage Salesforce Organizations option. The Slack admin then clicks on the Get Started button to connect Slack with a Salesforce org. Note that a Slack org can only be connected to one Salesforce org, so you won't see a Get Started button if your Slack account is already connected to a Salesforce org. The Slack admin enters the URL for the Salesforce environment and then decides whether or not to map user accounts automatically. It's highly recommended that you map user accounts automatically, and thus that's the default option. To map accounts automatically, there's an option to use email or SAML name ID. You'd use email if you want to match Slack users with their Salesforce user login by using the email field in both Salesforce and Slack. When the email values match between Salesforce and Slack, the accounts will be auto-mapped and users will be auto-authenticated into their respective Salesforce and Slack accounts. So end users will see the customer data and teammate conversations in both the Salesforce and Slack platforms. The Slack admin will click the Request Connection button when they're done making their selections. The Slack admin has done their part and are now just waiting on the Salesforce admin to approve the connection request. So once the connection request is initiated, the Salesforce admin receives an email notifying them of the request. The Salesforce admin can go into Setup and use the Quick Find box to manage the Slack connection. The admin will choose their corresponding mapping fields, agree to some terms and conditions, and then click the Approve button. The approved connection will be displayed along with the details of this connected Slack org. You'll notice that the user account mapping choices for both Salesforce and Slack are now shown. Note that this page is also the place where the Salesforce admin goes if there's a need to disconnect the Slack Salesforce connection. But we're not quite done yet getting the connection set up between Slack and Salesforce. Back in the Slack org, the Slack admin sees that the connection is ready to activate. The Slack admin clicks on the View Details link to proceed. The Slack admin is presented with the option to activate the connection by clicking the button. Once the Slack admin clicks the Activate button on this next screen, the connection is finally live. Just as the Salesforce admin has the ability to disconnect the Salesforce org from the Slack org, so does the Slack admin have the ability to disable the connection. After the connection between Slack and Salesforce is live, the next step is for the Salesforce admin to configure objects for Salesforce channels. Here's a tip if you're on a learning journey and are using a Salesforce trial org to get some hands-on experience. It will be easier to complete step 2 if there are records in the object for which you want to grant access to in Salesforce. Therefore, you may want to consider adding a few account and opportunity records along with records for any object you'll want to configure access to in Salesforce. You'll notice there are some suggested objects like account, opportunity, case, and campaigns. You can add multiple objects at one time if you want. Also, there is no limit to the number of standard or custom objects that can be set up for in Salesforce Channels. For each standard or custom object the Salesforce admin adds, a new Slack component will need to be added to the object's record page. The Salesforce admin can click on the object page clickable link in the record pages column and then click on the edit button. Doing so will take the Salesforce admin to the Lightning App Builder where the admin can edit the page layout. The Salesforce admin searches for the Slack component on the left and then adds it to the record page. Notice that the admin can choose where on the page that they want it to appear. Once they click the Save button in Lightning Builder, the user will see the Slack component on the record page. The next step is for the Salesforce admin to grant access to Slack for Salesforce users. If all Salesforce users already have Slack access, then this step isn't necessary. If not, then continue on. The Salesforce admin goes to the Quick Find box in the Setup menu to access the Slack guided setup. The Salesforce admin clicks on the Manage button found to the right of step 3 on the page, next to where it says Grant users access to Slack automatically. The Salesforce admin selects to either auto-create and connect Slack accounts or to use identity management tools. One thing to note is that when a Salesforce admin grants users access to Slack automatically, the users receive an email prompting them to set up their Slack accounts. Now it's time for the Slack admin to complete the final step in the process, configure additional settings. Within Slack, the admin clicks on the workspace name, then clicks on Tools and Settings, and then clicks on Manage Salesforce Organizations. There will be one Salesforce org connected, and the Slack admin needs to click on the Salesforce org name, which is a clickable link. From there, the Slack admin will complete 2 tasks. A Slack admin will first want to review the default channel configurations for visibility and default lists. If you remember from earlier, the Salesforce admin set up in Salesforce which objects are allowed to have Salesforce channels. Now, on the Channel Configurations tab in the Slack admin dashboard, you'll see a list of those objects that were selected by the Salesforce admin. To the right of each object name are 3 little dots. When a Slack admin clicks on those 3 dots, they will see the option to edit configuration. The Slack admin sees 2 things here. The first is the default channel visibility. One option is public, which operates like a regular public Slack channel. Again, that just means that the messages and files and core Slack functions are public to anyone who's a full member. But again, those record details are still controlled by Salesforce permissions. And then the other option, if you don't choose public, is you can choose limited, which limits access to the record and the channel. Users who have permissions to view the record in Salesforce can see the record channel in Slack as well as in Salesforce. And then the second thing, in addition to channel visibility, that the Slack admin chooses is default lists. And so these are the related lists that will be pinned as tabs in the channel. You'll notice we mentioned that the 2 choices for default channel visibility is public and limited. private visibility is not possible for automatically created Salesforce channels in Slack because all Salesforce users who have access to the record in Salesforce have access by default to the Salesforce channel in Slack. This is very important to know. Editing a Salesforce channel configuration changes the default settings for new channels created. It will not affect Salesforce channels that have already been created. Thus, it's best practice to prioritize setting up configurations in Slack as soon as possible before many channels are created in Slack. That way, you'll have consistency within your Salesforce channels. The second settings to be updated by the Slack admin are the unfurl settings. The admin clicks on the Settings tab to the right of the Channel Configurations tab and then clicks on the Edit button to review and make changes to the record unfurl settings. The Slack admin can select one of 3 unfurl settings. When users share record page details in Slack, the URL to the record unfurls as a preview to Slack users. The information included in that preview is called a record unfurl. Unfurl setting choices are important to consider because record previews are visible to all members of the conversation they appear in, regardless of member permissions in Salesforce. We've explored the 4 main steps required for Salesforce and Slack admins to complete so that users can begin leveraging Salesforce channels. There are, however, more steps than be completed for organizations who want to go beyond the simple setup. For one thing, it's possible to convert existing channels to Salesforce channels, and Slack's workflow builder can be used to automatically create certain Salesforce channels automatically without the need for Salesforce users to manually create new Salesforce channels. Those instructions and more are included in the Salesforce Channels Implementation Guide, which is in the form of a PDF. If you want to follow along with the steps I presented here and also those in the implementation guide, you may want to set up a new Salesforce account with which to practice. You can sign up for a Salesforce Starter Suite trial account, and from there, you can actually, with a click of a button, spin up a free Slack trial and have it automatically connected. From there, you can complete the remaining steps to get started trying out the Salesforce Channels functionality. In addition to the implementation guide, I have a few more resources for you. Be sure to check out the Slack Help Center for more information on how to connect Salesforce and Slack. And you can get your individual questions about Salesforce channels answered in the Slack and Salesforce channel on communityslack.com. Thanks for watching. You can find me at Slack community events in Dallas, Texas, and also on LinkedIn.